Ladies and gentlemen, and Blackhawks fans of all ages, we just got an early chance to see many of the top prospects take on some of their peers at the first game of the Tom Kurvers showcase. Although the Blackhawks lost the game in overtime, there were plenty of noteworthy performances. In this video, we'll grade 10 of the most notable performances from this game, both good and bad. We'll give them each a grade on a relative scale, comparing my expectations for them going into this game with the reality of how they actually played. So without any further ado, let's get into it, starting from the lowest rating and making our way to the highest one. Now the first player we'll be covering is Del Mastro, and let me make this clear. I don't think Del Mastro was the worst player in this game, it's just that of the 10 prospects that I am highlighting in the video, he fell behind my expectations the most. And keep in mind that my grading system is on a relative scale, not an objective one. I'm comparing the player's performance in this game with my expectations going into the game. Del Mastro is a player that I was really excited to watch. He was an all-star in the AHL last season, he played in 2 NHL games with a great level of success for the Blackhawks at the end of the season, and we praised him extensively on this channel in the past for how refined and calculated he looked in the small NHL sample size. So needless to say, I had really high expectations going into this game. It's clear that the Blackhawks had the same high expectations as I did, as Del Mastro had the best usage of any Blackhawks defender. He was named an alternate captain, he quarterbacked the first power play unit, and was even the defenseman that began overtime alongside Nazar and Dach. So he was given every opportunity to shine, and let's just say he looked rusty throughout the evening. Now that's not to say he didn't have some good moments throughout the game. Take a look at this shift for example. The Blues enter the zone with speed, and basically all of the Blackhawks skaters other than Del Mastro are flat-footed, which leads to a wide open chance from the slot, and Del Mastro steps up with a huge shot block to help the puck leave the zone and to eliminate the defensive pressure. In another shift, the Blackhawks were having another frantic moment in the defensive zone. You see Del Mastro pointing his teammates to the right locations in the zone, showcasing some of the leadership that caused him to be named an alternate captain for this game to begin with. Although the Blues do get a couple of shots on net on this shift, Del Mastro once again helps calm things down in the defensive zone. Unfortunately, my standards for Del Mastro are much higher than a few simple defensive plays. Overall, it was not the kind of game you'd expect to see from a stay-at-home defenseman that wants to challenge for an NHL spot this offseason. There was just too much bad film from Del Mastro throughout the game. His opening shift of overtime was one of the worst shifts from a Blackhawks player in this game, so let's take a look at that now. I want to give a huge shout out to OV Clapbomb on X for letting me borrow this clip with his hilarious sound effects edited in. Let's just watch this in its appalling entirety.
Playoff runs in the future. Dach drives the net. The puck trickled over to the far wing. There was Del Mastro, but he fanned on it. Trying to poke it out. Bolduc. He's got Buchinger. Del Mastro and Bolduc get each other tied up. They go down, and Bolduc wins the puck back. Brings it over to Buchinger. Great play to Bolduc. In front to Dean. His backhander hits the post. He's hit the pipe 3 times. The other way. Del Mastro for the game. Deeks fans on the shot, and he might have been foiled. Like 2 inches of snow that have piled up in the third period.
I mean, let's be honest with ourselves here. I love the commentator making excuses for Del Mastro, but no, the snow is not the reason why Del Mastro didn't get a shot off here. It's true that the conditions weren't ideal, but everybody was playing on the same sheet of ice here. It was a simple overthinking moment from a defensive defenseman not used to being in that position, so he just overskated the puck. And let's be completely clear here, this wasn't a terrible Pierre-Luc Dubois-esque low-effort shift, because you can clearly see Del Mastro putting in a ton of effort. He's just not usually this frantic and puck-chasing, so it was a bit jarring for me to watch. Whatever he was doing throughout the game just wasn't working. And although this was definitely the most comical moment from Del Mastro, he struggled at plenty of other times throughout the game too. Earlier in overtime, Blues prospect Zachary Bolduc gained the zone and walked around Del Mastro way too easily for a good scoring chance. At other points, Del Mastro was not strong enough on the puck along the boards, causing him to lose it way too easily. In another shift on the penalty kill in the third period, Landon Slager intercepted the puck and managed to get it to Del Mastro, but Del Mastro failed to get the puck out on his backhand, which allowed the Blues to keep up the pressure. There's so many examples of these small plays that you wouldn't normally expect to see from Del Mastro. He was put in the lineup to be a stabilizing force, and he did not do that enough in this game. His overall grade from me is a D. The next prospect we'll be grading is 22-year-old goaltender Drew Commesso. Judging a goaltender based on a performance from a prospect showcase event is always tough because goaltending statistics are inherently related to defensive play. You probably know by now that the Blackhawks were terrible defensively in this game, so it's pretty harsh to judge Commesso too strictly. For the majority of this game, Commesso did really well. This is my favorite type of save that a goaltender can make. A Blues player goes coast to coast almost untouched on a 1-on-2 rush and gets a great chance on Commesso, who just casually snags the puck out of midair and nonchalantly throws it back into the slot after the whistle. It's the unspoken way for a goaltender to tell his defenders, I got you covered even if you make mistakes. And my goodness, the Blackhawks made plenty of those mistakes. Commesso had plenty of other moments throughout the game where he made tough saves, showed good rebound control, and calmed the frantic Blackhawks defense. He even had this awesome blocker save on a gorgeous Bedard-esque toe drag release from Bolduc. Most of the goals that he gave up weren't his fault, as there was always a ton of traffic in front of him. But here's the bottom line. The difference between NHL starters and NHL backups is that NHL starters can be counted on to make the save to keep their team in it at the most important time. And in this game, Commesso failed to make that save in overtime, as he let a relatively weak shot through to end the game. If you think it's harsh that I'm judging him almost exclusively on the goal that he let in at the end, well, welcome to the life of a professional goaltender. I simply cannot give Commesso any higher than a C-. The next prospect we'll be grading is Martin Misiak. Misiak is a player who probably will always have a ton of scrutiny on him, and honestly, he's the Kyle Davidson draft pick that I questioned the most at the time. Davidson drafted him with the 55th overall pick in the second round of the 2023 NHL draft, leaving a lot of other talent on the board at the time, including the Blackhawks' own Nick Lardis, who, trust me, we will talk about later in this video. So it's pretty clear that the Hawks had really high expectations for Misiak, even if the majority of the draft world considered the pick a reach at the time. The big issue I have with Misiak is, for whatever reason, he seems to be behind his schedule developmentally. He's a late birthday for the draft class. He's going to turn 20 later this month. Despite this, he's returning to the CHL this upcoming season as one of the oldest players in his league. To me, that's a bit of a red flag. Many of Misiak's bigger fans say that his style of play doesn't suit the CHL, and he'll blossom quickly once he makes his way to the professional level full time. Some even compare him to Andrew Shaw, a fan-favorite grinder who helped lead the Blackhawks to their dynasty. So going through this game, I was really eager to see that side of Misiak. I wanted to see his strength, aggressiveness, and willingness in puck battles. Frankly, I didn't see enough of that at all. Once again, that's not to say that Misiak didn't have some good plays in this game. His best play was his assist, as he gathered the puck on the left boards and showed patience before finding a darting AJ Spellacy down the middle of the ice. Spellacy did the rest as he drove to the outside before shooting the puck back across the goaltender for a really nice goal. It was a good pass from Misiak, which caused his grade to be a lot higher than it otherwise would have been. He also had a couple other flashes. At the end of the first period, Misiak showed some good patience to wait for Lardis to come in support and then attempted a backhand pass that was too high for Lardis to tap in. It was a good idea, but Misiak way overcooked the saucer pass and didn't really give Lardis a chance. But I wasn't that interested to see the offensive stuff in Misiak's game because that won't be his strength in the NHL anyways. I wanted to see him show off the true bottom six traits that had the Blackhawks so excited to draft him. And unfortunately, I didn't see it. He lost board battles and frankly looked completely physically outmatched at times. And keep in mind, this isn't a kid going up against grown men. This is a prospect showcase, and Misiak is up against his own peers. It's not a good sign to see him outworked this much, and it's clear that he needs to gain a lot of muscle and fast. He also showed really bad defensive recovery and effort. Remember that excellent Del Mastro block that we mentioned earlier in this video? Well, keep your eye on Misiak here. He lost his stick on the zone entry and went to the corner to retrieve his stick instead of continuing his defensive responsibility. This left a man wide open in the slot for a grade A chance, and Del Mastro had to bail him out. I guess I just don't see it with Misiak. If you still believe in his NHL potential, I need you to justify it in the comment section and sell me on this dude, because I saw so much more effective and translatable bottom six play from Landon Slaggert, Colton Dach, Gavin Hayes, Paul Ludwinski, and Samuel Savoie in this game alone. All of the guys I just mentioned and many more will be competing with Misiak for the precious few bottom six spots that the contending Blackhawks will have. Who do you guys think Misiak beats out from that list? I just didn't see anything in his game that suggests that he can beat out those names, and it feels like to some degree time is slipping from underneath him. If Misiak didn't have that nice assist on the Spellacy goal, his grade would have been significantly lower than Comesso's and Del Mastro's. But he did make a good play on that goal, so his final grade is a C. And now we get into prospects that really impress me, and we start off with Nolan Allen. Let me put it simply. Nolan Allen was by far the best defenseman on the Blackhawks in this game. While that isn't saying much given how bad everyone else was, it is still a positive sign for Allen's future. The Blackhawks coaches named Allen the captain of this team, and he did exactly what was expected from him. The greatest compliment I can give to Nolan Allen's play in this game is that I don't have a lot of film on him to break down, so this part of the video will be short and sweet. The commentators compared him to Niklas Hjalmarsson, which is certainly a loftier comparison than I am comfortable with, but he sure had a really Hjalmarsson-style game. He produced next to nothing offensively. You see him here missing the net, and he stopped everything that came his way defensively. So you may be asking, why isn't his grade even higher than it is? Well, keep in mind that this is an expectation versus reality grading system. I expected Allen to be really solid defensively, and that's exactly what he was. For the same reason that I rated Del Mastro so low, Allen is rated right in the middle of the pack. He didn't have as many fireworks both offensively and physically as he did in last year's Prospect Showcase game against the Minnesota Wild, and I probably would have bumped his grade up a bit if he did. But that's nitpicking, and Allen was really good throughout the game against the Blues. For now, Allen gets a really solid B. The next prospect up for grading is a fan favorite, Samuel Savoie. But before diving into his performance in this game specifically, let's take a moment to briefly acknowledge the journey that he went through to get to this point. Savoie suffered a gruesome injury to his right femur just over a year ago in his Blackhawks preseason debut, which required him to be stretchered off the ice. Despite the setback, his resilience and positive outlook made him an instant fan and locker room favorite. Listen to head coach Luke Richardson talking about the aftermath of that injury.
He's on his way home, and the trainers told me this morning that he hasn't stopped smiling since, all the way through it. So he's a unique personality that we love, and all the players love him. So it'll be nice to have him back around. I know he'll be hobbling around a little bit for a while, but he's a great character kid.
I mean, smiling throughout the process of that gruesome injury just further shows off his great personality. He is such an easy prospect to root for. Savoie rehabbed while in Chicago and returned to the QMJHL in January, where he finished the season with 22 points in 21 games. He then signed his 3-year entry-level contract with Chicago on July 25th. But Savoie is not just on this list because he's a great story, he's on this list because he played phenomenally well in this game. He had a bit of a slow start as he took a pretty cheap slashing penalty on the forecheck 200 feet away from his own net. It's not the type of penalty that coaches like seeing. However, the more the game went on, the more he grew into it. He began the third period with a speedy and dynamic rush down the right boards, which ended with him driving the net hard and drawing a hooking penalty, putting the Blackhawks on the power play to start the third period and really setting the tone for the rest of that period. I love seeing this aggressiveness. It's a huge part of Savoie's game and will be his identity if he makes the Blackhawks as a bottom six piece. When Nick Lardis sent the Blackhawks to the penalty kill later in the third period, Savoie stayed extremely engaged and showed off tremendous effort and speed as he beat the goaltender to the puck, but is just unable to corral it on the other side for a wide open tap, and the goaltender gets the slightest touch on the puck to disrupt it. As the period wound to a close, Savoie still remained engaged as he threw an aggressive little body check with 7 seconds left in regulation. If he ends up being a long-term Blackhawks mainstay, he'll be a bottom 6 energy piece. I saw so much of that energy in this game, which made me really pleasantly surprised. Savoie gets an easy B+ from me. The next prospect that we'll talk about is Colton Dach. Dach did something that most Blackhawks prospects don't tend to do. He publicly stated that he felt he deserved a shot in the NHL out of training camp last year. He did not end up getting that shot, and although he showed good flashes in the AHL last season, his year was cut short by injury. Dach once again made it clear that his goal is to make the NHL roster out of camp this year. It's pretty clear that he doesn't mind setting lofty expectations for himself and putting a bit of a target on his back in the process. As Ben Pope eloquently put it in a recent Sun-Times article, a big part of reaching that goal is showing a level of physicality and power forward play more consistently. It's very clear that Dach was completely focused on that, as he played with a tremendous physical edge throughout the game. Take a look at this scrum. Dach took a Blues player to the ground and then let him get back up again just to judo flip him to the ice again. You know his teammates love seeing that edge from him, and frankly it's about time that he showed that consistently. I hope this new style of play does not lead to more injuries, but Dach also showed some good offensive play in this game, even getting robbed on a surefire goal by the Blues goaltender and the post. If Dach continues to play like this offseason, it wouldn't shock me to see him get an NHL spot coming out of camp. He gets a solid B+ for his performance in this game. The next prospect that we'll be giving a grade to is Frank Nazar. Let's just get this out of the way. Frank Nazar was noticeably the most talented player on the ice for either team. I'm even comfortable going as far as to say that Frank Nazar will probably be the best professional player out of any of the prospects on the ice for either team. It did not take long to realize why. He won the opening faceoff of the first period, and after the Blackhawks gained the zone, Nazar showed off his trademark engagement off the puck and willingness to support his teammates. The puck wound up behind the net, and Nazar's aggressiveness forced the Blues defender to trip him, sending the Blackhawks to the power play less than 30 seconds into this game. On the power play itself, Nazar made a quick pass to Lardis to facilitate the easy entry. Once the Blackhawks gained the zone, Nazar was in complete control. He waited in the right corner for an opening and then threaded an absolutely gorgeous saucer pass to Gavin Hayes in the bumper position, but Hayes fanned on the one-timer. The puck was recovered by the Blackhawks after a good play in the boards by Dach, and after a few quick passes, Nazar once again got the puck, this time on the left side of the power play structure. He nonchalantly sent an inch-perfect cross-seam pass right to the tape of Nick Lardis, who made no mistake, one-timed it in for an early 1-0 Blackhawks lead. There are genuinely too many amazing moments from Nazar throughout this game, so I won't be able to cover them all, but I really want to look at least one more. Take a look at this clip. Landon Slacker missed Colton Dach on a pass, and the puck went all the way down for icing, except it didn't because look at Nazar's speed to negate the icing. He's absolutely shot out of a cannon here. This is not the kind of high effort you expect to see from a blue chip prospect against this weak level of competition, but Nazar absolutely had a point to prove, and he went out and proved it. He was the primary play driver for his line throughout the evening, and he was absolutely the biggest reason that his line dominated play at 5-on-5 throughout the game. I'll let a few other nice flashes and almost moments from Nazar play through, but let's talk about his grade, because I do have 3 Blackhawks players rated higher than him. For those of you who've been following this channel from the beginning, you already know how high my expectations were for Nazar going into the game. Once again, this grading scale is expectations versus reality. I already expected Nazar to be head and shoulders above anyone else on the ice, and for a lot of the game, he was indeed head and shoulders above everyone else. There were just a few of his teammates that surprised me positively more than Nazar did, because I already knew going into the game that Nazar would be unbelievable. But he also had some inconsistencies in this game. It wasn't from a lack of effort. We already talked about how much effort he showed throughout the game. It was more a case of a prospect who realized sometime in the first intermission that he was bored of this lower level of competition. So he decided to try to take on the entire Blues team over and over and over again. I'm not too bothered that he turned the puck over a few times doing this. It's not uncommon for good prospects to do this when they don't feel challenged. But what does bother me a little bit is how many unnecessary hits Nazar took in the process. For me, that slightly lowered his grade, as I would have loved to see him protect his body more than he did. Still, Frank Nazar ends with an A-. He was about as good as it gets. And now we get into the 3 prospects that positively surprised me the most, and we begin with Paul Ludwinski. Ludwinski's always been fast. Very fast. But my criticism of him in the past is that he struggled at times to consistently translate that speed into effective hockey play. Paul Ludwinski was not only effective, he was incredible in this game. Like Nazar, there are way too many great moments to pinpoint everything, so let's just focus on a couple key plays. This shift is on the penalty kill, and the puck is leaving the zone. Ludwinski begins to slowly leave the zone to prevent the break-in, but he quickly accelerates to full speed when he realizes that he can beat the Blues player to the puck. He easily wins that race, then dips his shoulder towards the left corner before abruptly changing direction to go behind the net. And you can see how the entire Blues team is mesmerized by his speed. He attracts the defensive pressure from all of them before finding Slaggert open in the slot, and Slaggert is able to bury the shorthanded goal. That is just an unbelievable translatable play from Paul Ludwinski. I could show so many more examples of how good he was on the forecheck, because he was truly unreal. But Ludwinski also showed flashes of how his speed can lead to offense, as he nearly goes coast to coast here, but is stopped by a good shoulder and a good stick check. Overall, Ludwinski exceeded my expectations, and I am so excited to see what he can do in a full AHL season. Watching the IceHawks this year is going to be so fun. Ludwinski gets an easy A- from me. Now let's talk about the 2 most impressive Blackhawks prospects in my opinion. And we begin with AJ Spellacy because his game was near perfect. For those who don't know, Spellacy grew up mainly playing football, even stating, "I always thought I was going to play football. That was always my dream until probably 3 years ago, when I started to love hockey more. I thought if I put in the work towards this, I could be a great player someday. The work's only starting." So he is much less experienced than the majority of his peers are, making his performance even more impressive. His play was nearly perfect. His speed, impressive. His defensive engagement, impressive. His physicality, impressive. His between the whistles tenacity, impressive. His offensive ideas, impressive. I mean, take a look at his goal. We broke down this briefly earlier, but look how Spellacy receives the pass without breaking stride and then almost passes it forward to himself as he crosses the blue line to create some space for himself, and then he shoots it with deception from a tough angle back across the goaltender, showing his shooting accuracy. It's unfair for a player with his tools and his relative inexperience to already be this good. The sky is truly the limit for Spellacy, and the early returns are amazing. He gets an easy A from me. And that leaves us with the most impressive prospect in this game, in my opinion, Nick Lardis. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Nick Lardis can shoot the freaking puck. His shot is already NHL caliber, and he showed that off with a goal in the opening 2 minutes of the game. That will be his bread and butter in the NHL. But what isn't talked about enough is how much the rest of his game is filling out. Firstly, his offensive game isn't just potentially great, it's already great. Take a look at this play. When you see Nick Lardis, you probably don't expect him to be effective at winning loose pucks. But his skill is more than enough to get him by. He retrieves the puck behind the net before using his long stick to dipsy-doodle the defenseman, creating a ton of space for himself. He then comfortably executes a perfect saucer pass to the point for a really good chance. His playmaking in general stood out all game. He made really good decisions on the breakout and in support, as he alternated between choosing quicker passes to avoid checks and being patient to open up passing lanes for his teammates. Those are traits that lead to success for smaller players in the NHL, as Blackhawks fans definitely know from years of watching Patrick Kane. But that's not to say that he doesn't show a little bit of physicality too. When he was drafted, he was only 165 pounds, so he was extremely undersized. However, he looks noticeably stronger now than he did at this time last year. This extra touch of physicality makes him comfortable to use his body if needed, but that'll never be his biggest strength in the NHL. Overall, this was about as perfect a game as you can expect to see in this setting. Sure, Lardis sometimes tried too much, and he did take a dumb high sticking penalty, but in terms of seeing good progress from Lardis, I saw everything I wanted to see and more. I am happy to give Nick Lardis the only A+ grade of this video. And with that, it's time to conclude. What do you agree with? What did I get completely wrong? Be sure to let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you down there and in the next video. Until next time.